Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we watched Little Women.
Wow, we were so synced on that.
I know. It's going to be like the perfect pause. We watched Little Women. So I know that this is kind of a departure from a lot of these big, silly, action-packed or scary IPs. Have we done like a more coming-of-age drama like this before?
I don't think that we have.
Yeah.
I don't think that we have, and especially not one that centers women so clearly and definitively.
Mm-hmm.
Like this movie, like, okay, the reason that I wanted to do this week was because we've had like a lot of testosterone and toxic masculinity films that we've been talking about recently. So I was like, just give me something with like some estrogen. Come on. But man, both of these movies hit me so fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a lot with my family right now, and I don't have. I recently, last year, lost my grandmother, who is the only person that I just love unconditionally in my family, and I cut everybody off really, really hard. So seeing so many women like on screen, seeing them be so close, seeing these different portraits of femininity and what that looks like and how everybody navigates the complexities of being a woman in the world, like in their own ways, like, oh, I'm so happy. And also just seeing women just love each other and just be like there for each other and also have their emotions and get angry and then, you know, like also like just fucking be there unconditionally. Like, man, I fucking loved these movies. And I remember watching the 1994 one when I was a kid, and I was like, I fucking love this. And I hadn't watched it in a long time, so it was a treat to go back to that. And the second one was also a treat, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, I have no history with Little Women. Not the book, not the any movie, because I know that there's also like two other versions of this before.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of Little Women.
There's a couple of TV versions, and then there's also like a couple of other films and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it is a really good story.
Like the biggest ones, though. Like I feel like we got the big blockbuster ones. So like in this episode, we're doing the 1994 film with Winona Ryder, and we're doing the Greta Gerwig retelling in 2019. Correct?
Both of
2019?
2019. Yeah. Both have such a fucking stacked cast.
Oh my god, the cast is insane.
God.
On both.
Oh my god. Like I did not realize that the 1994 version had Susan Sarandon, Winona Ryder, Kirsten Dunst, the Felicity girl,
Claire Danes.
Claire Danes.
Christian Bale is
Christian
in it.
Bale, yeah. I was just like, holy shit. And then like in this next one, there's
Florence Pugh, Saoirse Ronan,
Meryl
Streep,
Laura Dern.
Laura Dern. Oh my god, Laura Dern. Yes.
Oh my god. Timothy Chalamet. Like, my god.
It is crazy. And I am a big fan of Greta Gerwig. Like, I think Lady Bird was fucking fantastic. Like, I just think she's really good at capturing stories like this. And I cannot wait to talk about that. So I have no history with any of this. So this is my first introduction to anything that is Little Women.
I was a little bit like, I was like, oh, I don't know how it's going to hold up. Because, like, I mean, I did not remember anything about this story. Like, I had not revisited it since I was a kid. And then just diving in, I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. I'm like, it was like wrapping a warm blanket around me. And just like, I love just seeing women be women. And
well, it's also just like, I love a good coming of age story. And like so watching just the nuances of like relationships as they change as you grow older, dealing with death of a loved one at such a young age, and or like, I mean, because they were older then, sure, but like even then, someone so close, like all of these really complex and nuanced hardships, I feel like, are captured so eloquently in both of these.
And both, yeah. They're different takes on the book, but I think each one of them had such an interesting take too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a lot. Oh god, I'm excited to talk about the new one because there's a lot about that, like new take, fresh look, a retelling, like a reimagined perspective on an old story. Like, ooh, it's really good. So I'm fucking pumped.
Should we just get into it?
Let's do it. Let's
do it.
During the American Civil War, the March family is doing everything they can to keep their spirits high and their stomachs full despite their financial woes. The 4 daughters, Jo, Meg, Beth, and Amy, pass the time doing chores, writing, playing music, performing their self-written plays, and all is well. Then one day the eldest girls, Meg and Jo, go off to a dance where Jo meets Theodore Lawrence, who quickly inserts himself as a member of the March family. Suddenly, the Marches get word that their father was wounded in the war, and their mother Marmee goes off to take care of him, leaving the girls to fend for themselves and a German family they've been helping through hard times. The little women are doing great around the house when all of a sudden Beth gets scarlet fever, prompting the quick return of Marmee, who manages to save Beth's life. However, Beth was unable to make a full recovery and became disabled as a result.
After that, things start to change. Father returns alive and well. Beth is gifted a piano from the Lawrence family. Meg marries Laurie's old tutor. Amy goes to Paris to study painting with old Auntie March. And Jo moves to New York to become a writer after turning down Laurie's marriage proposal. Everyone begins to process their life's choices in their own ways. Meg has children but struggles financially. Beth plays piano to escape the house she can never leave. Amy lives the life of luxury abroad and contemplates marriage to a wealthy man. And Jo starts to get published in New York while striking up a romance with Frederick Brahier, who is far too old for her. After Frederick criticizes her work for lacking tangibility, Jo gets word from home claiming Beth is on her deathbed. Jo immediately heads back home to be with her in her final days. Meanwhile, Amy and Laurie get married. It's a weird and sad time for Jo, but also the catalyst she needs to stop hiding from her feelings and write something real, the story of her and her sisters as the Little Women. She sends it to Frederick, who gets her a publishing deal. They are in love and open a school in Auntie March's old home.
Whee!
That ending happens real fast.
They get really. It's one of my big things for like the next one where I was like that was like strangely fat. Like, anyways,
yeah,
yes, it happened very quick. Where suddenly
in both
it's
of these, it happens very, very quick.
Yeah.
So if it feels off, it's because it does feel a little bit off. So that was intentional.
I was digging into the aesthetic of the films, so jot that down.
The aesthetic and like, you know, the feels, the big, like, okay, these fucking movies, and I'm sure the book, I've never actually read the book.
Yeah.
They are saying so fucking much and they are so complex and there is so much nuance in almost every facet of both films. I'm so excited. Where the fuck do you want to start?
Yeah, I will start just with my, like, I think it's not really a negative. It's more of a taste thing. I think at least with this first one, because of the style of the storytelling, it did feel like at times arduously slow. Just for me, it felt like, because there were so many beautiful moments of beats with like them playing and rabble rousing together, and like the moment she falls in the lake and you're like, what the fuck? Right after burning the papers, you're like, oh my god, this is crazy. There's a lot of those moments, but I feel like I don't know, it felt a little snoozy. But maybe it's just because of the time period where I was just like, oh, I don't know. That's just me. Apart from that, what a beautiful story. I do think that this story of Jo coming into her own, just in terms of like being a writer and being a caretaker and being a friend, and also like the conversation around autonomy that she has. Like, she understands the nuance and the intention behind marriage as sort of a monetary exchange, and she's like, I have to do for myself what I need to do first, and then I can think about that later, and I have aspirations that are more than marriage, and I know that that's not the norm, and all of that comes from their mom. Like the way that she talks, I mean, what is the first line that she brings in here when, what is it? Feminine weakness and fainting spells are the direct result of confining young girls to the house with their needlework and their restrictive corsets.
And
when
she's like, they're just as capable as boys. Like, what the fuck?
And the guy's like, wow, your girls are like so energetic. And she's like, yeah, because we keep women in the house and keep them small. And if you let them out and be themselves, they would be just as energetic as boys. Fuck off. And you're like...
And that's one of the things that I really loved about this movie in particular that the next one doesn't really have, like where we see Marmee, which I wonder if that's like, if she got that name because she's the March Mommy, right? I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
Or if that's her actual name. We don't know. But I really liked what a feminist icon she was and how fucking there she was for her children at every single point. And anybody that was around them or in proximity that dared to criticize any of them, she instantly shut them down, like with that comment. Or when Amy gets burned by her teacher, right? He like hits her, and I think it was a burn, but she comes home crying and she's like, fuck this. And she immediately starts writing a letter, and she's like, Joe, can you teach your sister? And she's like, yeah, cool. And she's like, cool. She's fucking out. And like the courage that she shows, like to stand up for yourself and to be yourself unapologetically. And she never once tells them like, girls, mind your manners or anything. She just lets them be and lets them exist. And I think that's why through her strength and her like her leadership, she's, you know, I mean, sometimes she calls out Amy for being a little bit vain or something, but like almost every time that she talks to them, she's doing it so intentionally, and it's so purposeful that you see that, and you see her daughters really latch on to that. So when they, you know, I know that you said like sometimes it felt a little bit long in certain moments, or like it hung on certain parts too much. And personally, I didn't think so, just because I loved seeing the feminine closest, like all five of them huddled around their dad's telegram, you know.
Those scenes, those were just like, I don't know exactly. I wish I like had written like, oh, this part and this part. There were just some moments outside of those like important moments of like relationship building and like love, where you just see just unnuanced outside of the narrative. Like we're just seeing these young women love each other and be there for each other.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, even when they're like up in the attic and they're all performing masculinity, they're all like being men, like because that's how they feel like, you know, they can be taken seriously. And it is this really cute moment where they make their own newspaper, and they're, you know, each person has a story. And you see, I feel like those moments that hung there probably a little bit longer than most films would. Like really what that was doing was cementing their character and cementing their relationships to each other, because that dynamic is so different, like between Beth and Joe. And I mean, just I feel like this movie didn't do Beth justice, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, just like each pair, like I mean, Amy and Joe too, like this is Joe's story, and everybody else is kind of there in proximity. But even within that, we still get to see these different examples of femininity. And I mean, so often we're kind of presented with like, there's one way to be a woman, or there are two ways to be a woman, right? It's either you get married or you don't, or it's this or it's that. And here we see you can get married for money, and that's fine. I mean, especially in those days, you have to like actually take care of yourself. We see Meg get married to a poor man, and she struggles. We see that more so in the next film, but we see Joe being a spinster, you know, and it's fucking hard because nobody wants to take her seriously. And Frederick has to open every single door for her to conversation or to these publishers, and you know, because otherwise she's not allowed to be in that space, like even to talk amongst her peers. So it's a really interesting conversation about what femininity looks like, and how that can take so many different forms, and how like female companionship can also look very different, right? I mean, some women, when presented with injustice, like fucking are ready to tear everything down. And some, like Marmee, she just wrote the letter and was like, fuck you, I'm taking you out. Like, we got this, you know? Yeah. So showing that there's so many different ways to respond to the world and to exist in the world as a woman. I was just fucking here for it. I drank up all of this.
I mean, at base level, just apart from the cinematic aspects of telling the story itself is fantastic. It's lovely. It is so joyous and so wonderful. Like, I mean, I want to go back to what you were talking about, the scenes where they're performing masculinity in the attic. How just that by itself as a scene, as a part of the story, is such an interesting conversation, dismantling these power structures where like, this is a movie about women. This is a movie largely devoid of men and masculinity, and is a commentary on the struggles of being a woman in patriarchal society.
And as a young woman, understanding that that
Yes.
even though they're so far away from society and anything, they understand that this is the social structure and this is how this works, and they're figuring out their place and how to dismantle that.
But while simultaneously making it look silly. Like, oh, look at us performing manliness, and look at my mustache, and oh, look at this pipe, and blah, 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 blah. We're men and do man. Like, it's so funny because it is exactly correct. Like, all of that is a performance. Gender is not real. Like, this system that actively puts these people down is fake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only upheld by those who are this fake thing, this bullshit masculine character. Like, and I do think that that is so lovely and fun because it is like, it's child's play. It's shitty and it's boring and it's basic. And I love that this scene clearly demonstrates and dictates that. Even when Christian Bale, Laurie. When he's
God,
like hiding
I
and
cannot
like,
wait to talk about him.
I know. We can't, like, badness, and such a good example of like,
also
the only man in the story.
All men in this are bad. Frederick is bad. Meg's husband is kind of a misogynist. The teacher is bad. Like, every man in here is bad and is actively working to keep women down, even if they're posing as a feminist and posing as an ally or giving them choice or anything, right?
Yeah.
So I love that.
Obviously that's so intentional, but then even on top of that, like, where we do see those actions actively like harming this family, even then, like Susan Sarandon, their mom, she's still very much of the autonomous, you're important, you are more important than that. I'm going to make sure that you know how important you are. Mm-hmm. So that way, like, and you had mentioned something earlier, just briefly, about how dangerous that is. Like, in general, like, how much confidence and courage it takes to have that, to show your children that, not only to just be it in the society, to say, I am important, I am autonomous, I matter just as much as any man in this world. Gorgeous. But then to teach your children that and show them like, hey, it's going to suck. It's going to be really hard. And you're going to struggle. And I'm really sorry that's true. But what's gorgeous is that if you know your worth, you can rise above it. And like, that is the constant. Like, there's not a line in here that, for the most, from what I remember, that she isn't instilling this in some way, whether it's the way that she's teaching them to share with one another, or the way that they treat their friends or treat Laurie or treat their mom. Like, she is reminding them at all times that, like, be present, but also understand who you are and respect yourself, and do not shrink yourself for any man or anybody else.
And there's a line where she says so distinctly, I wish I could give you a more just world. Like, she knows, and she's
fucking
like,
cool.
She has to look at her kids and say, look, this sucks, and I'm sorry that it sucks. I wish that it didn't, but this is where we're at. And what she's doing is just giving them the tools to be able to not only exist, but to break some of those rules, and enabling them and showing them that they are powerful without like ever, not once, questioning them or like making them feel little. You know, the only time that we see anybody doing that is a man that's trying to tear them down and the confidence that they have and that they've built.
Yeah, exactly.
And she is just the coolest fucking mom.
She's
and
the best.
Susan Sarandon is just the fucking best. So this was incredible. And I love that, like, also, like, on top of all of this complexity and all of this drama and this coming of age story, we see so fucking much joy in this family, even though they are struggling to put food on the table. You know, their dad's off at war, they're sad, their sister is disabled. You know, they don't have any money. They give their fucking Christmas breakfast to another family, but they're happy still, and they're singing off tune, and I love that nobody can fucking sing. They're like singing these Christmas carols, and it's so cute, but like, they are still finding moments to make their own joy, and I think that is the most fucking like radical thing that they could do, is even in like this world that like wants to tear them down and wants to make them less than, they are still rising above that. And it's like a big old middle finger when like Laurie is in the carriage and he's, you know, just being him with his rich ass family, and they're just fucking running along, singing super loud, having a great old time. And yeah, I have a lot to say about Laurie wanting to play poor, because I feel like there's a lot there. But yeah, like,
even them as sisters, the way that they lift each other, just from a level of like, I mean, apart from like the burning of the novel, like these moments of like obvious strife and then growth and then forgiveness, but Like these moments where it's like, oh yeah, no, for sure, you're the best writer I know. It's like, you don't know any other writers. It's like, I don't need to. You're amazing.
Yeah.
I think you're fantastic. Like, you deserve it. And it's like, oh, I'll consider it. It's like, you should, because you're very good. Or even when like Beth, like playing the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're literally so good. She's like, oh, I know. They're like, no, you should play. Like, and she's like, oh yeah, the confidence that they have, where it's like they recognize and they're kind and they understand and respect the goodness and the skill and the joy of their siblings. And arguably, it's like, I mean, not always the case with siblings, but like they're friends.
Sure,
they're friends, and it was so lovely because there was never a moment where it was like, oh yeah, she's like whatever about that. It's like, no, she's amazing. Like,
even
is she bad at churning butter? Maybe. Is she a fantastic writer? Without a doubt. You're like, yeah, I love this.
I mean, even when Amy marries Laurie, like Joe is still just like, you're my sister, I love you, I could never be mad at you. Like,
yeah.
And
fucking Laurie.
God, fuck Laurie.
He's so bogus.
Okay, but like, let's get into this, right? So
let's talk about Laurie.
This poor ass family, right? Is I mean, obviously they still have help around the house, and they are still able to, exist, right? They are struggling.
They're struggling, and they're poor by proxy.
But
they're impoverished by proxy. Yeah.
Right. So, but they're also making an effort to, like, when it's Christmas morning and there's this beautiful spread in front of them, and everybody is so fucking, oh my God, there's meat, there's sausage, there's an orange, there's butter, like, and they're like talking about like food that we eat every day, that like they are so fucking happy about it. And then to see like the mom come in and be like, hey, so this happened, and everybody's kind of like, they really want that fucking food, but at the same time, they're just like, God, I know that this is the right thing to do. We see Kirsten Dunst kind of put the orange down, and it's so heartbreaking. Like, and you're like, cool. But then they go out the door. They have their moment to be sad. They go out the door, and they are happy to do it, and they are singing, and all that matters is that they're together on Christmas, and that's fine. Like,
yeah.
And then when Laurie sees that, right, that's when he starts to be like, oh, well, I want that, right? Because whenever we see the Laurie house, it is so cold and
it's so drab.
Sterile,
yeah, it's empty. It's emotionless.
And it's like full of knowledge. It's full of wealth. It's full of all of the stuff. But it's not a home, you know? And so he wants to go and play with the poor people that do have that stuff, which, I mean, they do benefit from that because they get access to doctors for Beth, and they are gifted like a piano and like also theater tickets and stuff. So they do profit off of that friendship, right?
Yeah.
But he's so infatuated with them and their life. Like, at first I really liked Laurie. I was like, oh, okay, cool, like whatever, like his parents died and he's just like doesn't know what he wants, and he just wants to like have family. That's cool. And then the more he kept going on, it felt so gross, like, because
he's the perfect archetype of a man, of a stereotypical man, in the sense that like he sees the power that these women hold. He sees their joy. He sees their ambition. He sees their presentness. And he doesn't just want to be by them. He wants that from them, because
and it doesn't matter which one it is.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter which one it is, because at first he's looking at Meg, right?
Yes.
Where Joe stumbles off into the study at that dance or whatever when she's trying to like be like, oh, fucking boy, nope, I'm gonna leave, which was so funny. This movie is also incredibly funny, and Kirsten Dunst has the best fucking lines in this movie.
Kirsten Dunst is so good.
But so she stumbles into this like study, and he's like, oh, hey. And he's staring at Meg, right? And then they hang out and they dance, and it's cute. And then like when she eventually turns him down, he's like, oh, Amy. Yeah. Like, it doesn't, to him, it doesn't matter which march it is. And he even says, I despise everyone that marries one of you girls. I should be a part of your family. It doesn't fucking matter which one, because he wants that joy, right? Like, oh God, fuck that guy.
He just wants to take for himself this joy that they've cultivated and that they've earned. Like, it's theirs. He doesn't want to cultivate it himself or with them. He wants to take theirs from them. And it's incredibly evident. I mean, literally, like, he just jumps from one to the other. Like, well, if I can't have you, then if I can't have you, I'm just going to go here, whatever, who cares? And then, like, it is such fuckboy behavior, and it's so boring.
And it's honestly... So... like, the only one that he doesn't hit on is Beth, and that's because she becomes disabled, right?
Yes.
And, like, that doesn't serve him.
No.
But, like... whenever he talks to any of these women, he's a fucking asshole. He's an asshole to Meg when she goes and gets ready with her friends, and they're like, oh, that's the dress you're wearing, let me give you another dress, and she feels pretty and she feels happy, and we see her light up in a way that we've never seen her do, and in a way that we will never see in a way we will never see her again, because she is just like, please don't tell Joe, I just want this one night and I will be good for the rest of my life, because he tells her that that's not good, because he's a gaslighter and a fucking manipulator.
He's a bad guy. He's a bad, insecure little boy, and it's so toxic.
And then when he proposes to Joe, he's got like their whole life planned in his head, right? Where it's clear that he is going to own her, where he's like, great, let's go to London. We can be married. You can stay at home and be a writer, and you can do this without even fucking talking to her about it, right? And it's clear that they have chemistry, but he literally gets so fucking mad when she turns him down, to like a gross extent, to where he's like, one day you're going to love tremendously. You'll live and die for them. And I can't watch this. Bye. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? And then he like uses her as a reason to delve into his fuckboyness, where he's like, literally the next time we see him, he's hanging on to women, and he's just kind of a playboy that's running around Europe on daddy's money, just fucking whoever, because nothing matters and it's all fine, and this one girl dumped me, right? So then when Amy sees him, his first question is like, are you married, right? And then he calls her mediocre. He tells her like, oh, well, you should reform me, right? He's like trying to get her to fix him, because like that's what he needs from her, right? And then he's like, this is also incredibly, like, he's been predatory this whole time, but like, especially, she was a young girl in the beginning of this, a real young girl, and he's like, I promised I'd kiss you, like, you don't love that guy, like, and Joe, I'm not in love with her, don't worry, I'm not in love, like, while he's like clearly still in love with her, he's like, I just envy her, it's fine, but like I love you, like let's do this, do you want to marry me? And knowing that she as a young girl has loved him and has tried to get him to kiss her, or like, you know, when you're a young person and you have a crush on somebody or whatever, like he knows that and he exploits that, and she is about to get married to this, she's about to get everything she's ever wanted. She's fucking painting in France, she's gonna get this rich ass husband that she actually likes, you know, and is actually really good to her. And he's just like, nah, baby. He comes over and she fucking goes for it. And I was so fucking sad. I was heartbroken.
He's so nasty. He is just like prototypical misogynist trash can. And it's guised in this story. I do think it's like the narrative portrays it incredibly well. Like, even though throughout we're still seeing these characters like, wow, he's so handsome, and wow, like, oh, I can't, he's irresistible. Even within the narrative, we as an audience are still aware, despite how handsome he is, despite how charismatic he may be, he fucking sucks. There's never,
like, because at first you're like, oh, okay, Lori, like, maybe, like, I mean, he's cute, he's there, whatever, right? Yeah. And then as you start to recognize his predatory behavior, and like, when he lets out those little golden lines where he just like tears everything that these women are down to nothing, and then tries to be like, but look, I think you're something. It's really fucking awful. And then like you realize, like, going back and like rewatching and looking at his behavior, you're like, oh yeah, this is gross, this is really awful. But as women, we're kind of programmed or like, that's supposed to be romantic, right?
Like, I've thought of all of this stuff and I cannot live without you. Like the manipulative, like, literally, yes. I cannot do anything without you and I will die, I'll kill myself if you don't. And it's like, stop You're manipulating. Like, take a second, go be like, she said no, cool, go home, think. But you don't know how to be with your feelings. You just spew all of your nonsense out on this other person. And then suddenly when it's out and you're feeling better, it's like, wait, why are you feeling like shit? Why are you, like, it's just, he's so bad. And it's such an interesting way to show this archetype.
And like, of course, like they made him marry Amy just to remind you of how predatory he is, right? So it's like there is no redemption for him. And you're like, here is how to spot red flags, ladies. It is, does this person act like Laurie?
Literally. I do think it's interesting too, and we'll get into it with the next one, but the way that they do that sort of heightened, I feel like, in the next one.
Yeah.
Like there are so many wonderful beats where it's like, in this one, it's a little bit more subdued. It's a little bit more, that's just him. And we're there's sort of an understanding of like, at least within the character perspectives, like, there's a level of like unspoken forgiveness around Laurie that they all sort of have. But I feel like that is not the case in the next one, where it's a little bit more like the text for his character is like oafy and kind of stumbly and like bad. And he says a couple things that I'm like, oh, like it's very clear they've written this character like he sucks. Like these lines are like they're written because his character sucks. It's like intention. We're supposed to not like him for doing this. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm excited but yes. This character is so intentional. I
did like this portrayal of Laurie and like of all of the men, because there really is nothing redeeming. I mean, even we can go on to the Professor to Frederick, where
let's talk about him.
So
first and foremost,
much older.
How the fuck old is she, and how the fuck old is he? Because he's 45 and she's like 16.
She's like 20. Early 20s in there, because I looked that up. I was like, what the fuck is this? Well, but yeah, he is like 40. And I love that choice because, I mean, this is the first time she's in the city. You know, she's looking for validation. She's a young writer and all of that. And it's not just like, oh, well, you know, it's a 40-year-old playing a 20-year-old. Like, no, he's
40.
An older man. He knows this. He is doing this intentionally. I really like that choice, but I hate that at the end it's rewarded.
Yes, I hate at the end that it's rewarded too, especially in these moments. And I know, like, I want to talk about this scene specifically when she gives him her writing and his first line is, oh, this interests you?
So fucking awful. So awful.
Ew.
I got so fucking
nasty.
mad at that.
Well, I like in the story that at least her reaction's like, yeah, fuck off. Like,
yeah, she doesn't
like,
give him an inch.
Are you serious? Like
Winona Ryder in this role is incredible.
Yeah. It's like, no, I'm just trying to be like, because I care about your work. She's like, I don't care. That's fine. Because even in my notes when he says that, I was just like, just say fucking congrats. Literally. Be like, wow, congrats. Like, this is sick. Do you want notes? Easy.
There is a better way to say that than like, are you so fucking serious?
It's so patronizing. Oh, so this interests you? Fuck off. I do like his follow-up, even though it like he still sucks. I do like that he's at least recognizing something. And so his response is, my opinion is of no importance. You're like, yes good. You get it. I like that.
But the way that he said that was very manipulative.
It is, yeah.
So he was just like, whatever, I guess I don't matter. Knowing that she has a crush on him, right? And
he's a bad guy.
So that he didn't mean that at all. That was literally just to be like, okay, whatever. Like, well, I guess I don't matter to you.
Their ages also kind of threw me off just from the casting choice. From like the recast for Kirsten Dunst plays a young Amy. And Samantha Mathis plays the older Amy. Yeah. But then the other characters, they just did not recast. Like, they did not give an old.
That felt odd to me.
It was really odd. And it really kind of threw me off.
Yeah.
And here's one of the interesting tidbits that I looked up. When they were casting for this, actually, that was
for
a big...
For this one or the next one?
For this one specifically.
Okay.
This was a big talking point because apparently they were looking for that role to be Mary Louise Parker. She was a big... in conversation for it. And then they had almost settled completely on Reese Witherspoon to play both. They weren't going to do they weren't going to do a recast. It was because apparently she was short enough to where she could play that young, and then she could also play older because at the time I think she was like 15. So it would be perfect. And then they ended up saying, no, scrap that. Apparently Kirsten Dunst was so good as the young version. They're like, because she's so good, she has to be in it, but she cannot play an 18-year-old. Yes, she cannot play an 18-year-old.
She is so good in this movie. Her fucking lines are so good. She is so over dramatic. She is so over the top.
She's amazing. I think it's awesome that that's like part of the reason they were like, well, we have to just do the double cast for her character. Personally, it did not work for me. But knowing why they did it, I'm like, you go, Kristen. I love that. But yeah, I think it was a little jarring because Winona Ryder looked the same. Like I could not tell that she had aged significantly, and now there's this like other person who is like aged significantly and does not look like the child, and I'm like, who is this? What are we doing?
And I guess part of the reason, right, if you think about it, like Amy is so much younger than everybody.
Yeah.
And we're seeing Joe and Meg when they are like about to be married off, like they're of that age. So there wouldn't be as much of a difference.
That's true.
But I really like Amy being younger because I think that suits her jealousy, her being unable to control her emotions much better with her jealousy, with being so over dramatic, and also just after hearing, Aunt March and all of these, because I think Amy is a really interesting character as, especially in the next one, somebody that has to like hear all of the expectations of women and what we tell women that they should be and what they should do. She really internalizes that, and especially from Aunt March, where she's from a young age, she's like, nope, I'm marrying rich, fuck all of this, right? And it's so interesting because we see, especially in the next one, we see the weight that carries and how that shapes and molds this person. And I think it was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Her character is so complex, and especially I am so excited to talk about the next one because I love Florence Pugh. I think she's amazing. So her as this character, so good.
Yeah, and it's also again interesting. Like I didn't realize this, but I think Amy is the only one that goes to a proper school, right? The others were homeschooled or schooled where, because their parents had a school, right? And then they got shut down because they weren't just admitting white children. Which is another thing to say about the family, because they also like don't consume silk or anything like that because they're cognizant of the slave labor that goes into that. So I like that as kind of a conversation. But also like, Amy is told, marry rich, marry rich, marry rich. And her teacher, like these people that like are supposed to mean something to her, her role models and stuff, like her teacher literally tells her it's as useful to educate a woman as it is to educate a cat. Like, that's fucked up. And then Lori is being all like flirty and predatory with her, and then like her auntie is trying to tell her like, oh, get married, do all this stuff, the whole family is riding on you because everybody else in your family failed. Like, I mean, that girl's got so much fucking pressure.
She really does. Yeah.
But I don't feel like her character as a whole was really well developed in this film. I liked her character development in the next one much better. In this one, it just kind of felt like she was there and funny and overdramatic and great, but then she was an adult, and then she wanted to bone Lori. The end. Like, I didn't see a lot of transformation from point A to point B. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Amy in the second, or in the Gerwig film, is way, like, it's apart from just a way more developed. We spend more time with her, too, which I thought was fantastic. And Florence Pugh's delivery, like, yes, it didn't work when she was younger, but, like, everything she does was so good and nuanced, and like all of her choices were so fucking cool. Like even the moment Lori like shows up and then he's like whatever, and she like just she's like, fuck you, I hate this, I hate you, and I hate this, get away from me, why are you doing like.
And in this one she's like, oh, Lori,
yes,
like,
exactly.
hey.
In that one she's like, you're a piece of shit, fuck off. And it's just like, yes, it feels so much more righteous. Her character and her choices feel so much more influenced by reality. They feel like earnest. They feel so like, they feel palpable
which is funny, like, because in this one she has a stronger mother figure, right? Who does teach her to fucking clap back and to call people out on their bullshit. And in the other one, Marmee really isn't around very often. And again, we'll get to that. But yeah, like this film, it focuses in much more on Joe and on Meg than any of the other characters. Like, Beth is hardly a character in this film. She's there for a minute. She literally gets scarlet fever and is permanently disabled for helping others. Like, when all of the other girls were being selfish, and I know that that's part of it, is that life is unfair and all of this, but I hate that poor fucking Beth, like, she basically got written off because she was kind and everybody else was thinking about themselves and being selfish, and we see her just like immense overwhelmness and sadness, like when she opens that door just before she gets scarlet fever, and it's it's real hard because she is just trying to be the best that she can for everybody. She's kind of the every woman. And I mean, she plays the piano, but I mean, every Meg, Joe, and Amy are all such big characters with such big personalities that she, as a character, just kind of like fades into the background a little bit.
She's written as like an egoless martyr, just in the sense of like, she'll do whatever she needs to do for what. Like I understand why she's here, and it really, unfortunately, is just to be sort of this sacrificial character that ends up binding them together in the long run. Like,
right.
And that sucks, and it's really sad. I mean, her death scene. So it's like, oh my god. Okay, no, I'm not even gonna talk about it. We'll talk about it next because it's too much and it makes me sad. That scene in this one is very sad, and she really is just this figure who is supposed to show them as a family. Like, she's meant to bring them together, and part of this coming of age is it is going through the hardest moments of your life and knowing that you're gonna be okay at the end of it. Like Beth, she passes away, she's dying. They know she's gonna die. Like, how hard. It's the most impossible thing. It's the most impossible thing in their life, and they have to go through it, and they survive after the fact, and they grow from it, and they're going to be heartbroken for the rest of their lives. But that is unfortunately life, oftentimes, especially. And I mean, in just a coming of age story like this, it is so intentional, and I think good for the story, because it really is like the hardest hardship they have to experience, and Joe specifically. And you really see her embrace that darkness with such grace and such love. Like in that last moment when they're in the room and she's telling her like, oh, you have to keep writing. And like, oh my God, I'm tearing. Like, it's really.
I cried.
I know.
So fucking
it's really
hard.
sad.
Both of these movies got me so fucking good because.
It's super sad. And like, it's beautiful and it's lovely. And I love that these scenes are there and that they exist because ultimately it is joyous. I mean, arguably at the end of the day is why she writes The Little Women. It's for Beth. Like, she did it for Beth. That's why. Boom.
And just like Joe as a coming of age character, like also seeing like her coping mechanisms and how she like tries to sabotage her sister's getting married, like the curling iron incident where she's like, my sister's bald. Like, it was so funny. And the way that she hides like behind her performativity of like, you know, she uses shock and charm but doesn't mean it. When she meets Lori, she's like, I'm going to go to college and Europe and New York. Are you shocked? Oh my God, are you shocked? Like, and she does like this cute little dance because she's so proud of herself, but like her heart isn't in it yet. She still wants to, she loves where she is now, you know? She hates skirts and she curses all the time. And she's just so fucking rebellious at like literally every moment. And I fucking love it. And when she stops, the only time that she really stops this performance is once she's able to process the death of her sister and the death of her childhood, right? And she comes to terms with that. And only then is she able to actually find success. And she recognizes that it's hard and it's strange and it's weird and she's strange in it, but it's fine. Like, she's gonna be okay and she's ready to move forward. And I think that's so fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Also, I love Joe's writing hat. It was so cute.
It is.
Her little writing nightcap.
Yeah. She's such an endearing character. And like,
the cats, them dressing up their cats for these plays. Oh my God. So
iconic.
Cute.
I think I really want to talk about the next one.
Should we just get into it?
Let's do it. I'm so down.
Okay. The four March daughters are adults, living their dreams, alive and thriving in the world. Jo is a writer in New York, experiencing life as a spinster. Meg is a wife and mother. Beth plays music every day, and Amy is studying painting in Paris. As they move through their daily lives, they start to reconcile their childhood memories, from putting on plays in the attic, to going to fancy singles parties, to their sister Beth getting sick, father coming home from the war, and so on. We see Beth and Mr. Lawrence Sr. become friends through music. Meg falls in love with John. Laurie and Joe awkwardly dancing together, her turning down his marriage proposal, Amy being jealous of Laurie and Joe, and all the girls dealing with what it means to be a woman in a world where a woman's only hope in having stability is to marry rich, a lesson Auntie March drills into their heads every moment she gets.
One day, Joe gets a telegram informing her that Beth is on her deathbed. She immediately drops everything and leaves New York without even telling her friend Frederick where she was going. Joe and Beth spend every moment together, and Joe is finally faced with something she cannot challenge as her sister passes on. Meanwhile, across the sea, Laurie, being the worst, convinces Amy to marry him instead of her current suitor. As Joe starts to rethink her life choices, she gets news of Laurie's marriage to Amy and again has to face her reality. Stricken with grief for the sister she lost and the childhood she never wanted to end, Joe decides to write a story for her Beth, their story, and sends it off to be published. Frederick shows up to the March house and is welcomed with open arms. Joe's novel gets published and she opens a school with Frederick and her sisters. So, this movie fucking rules, first and foremost.
100%.
I think, personally, this style of sort of time-jumping storytelling worked so fucking well. Like, the fact that the opening scene is her selling that thing to the magazine, first and foremost. Like, hey, I have a friend who's doing this. Is like, what? Is it a girly thing? He's like, no, whatever. He's like, fine, I'll give you this. Well, I think you should give me this. I'm giving you this. Okay. Like, this tit for tat. We're getting Joe off the bat. We're getting exactly who she is. She is a no-nonsense. I'm going to do whatever I have to. I get that I'm a girl. I get it, but fuck you, and I'm still going to try. Like, immediately. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, in it, off the bat. Yes, I'm on Joe's team. We get it. Fuck this world. Fuck this guy. Fuck everything. You're amazing. I'm so here.
Yeah, I love that. I love that opening scene.
It's so good. It was so good.
Fucking cool because you learn everything that you need to know about Joe and about the world that they're in, right? And I really, really like that we show everybody where they're at now, because you have like so much context when you then go back and revisit these events. So like being introduced to Laurie as an adult and Amy where they're at, and then going back and seeing how all of these things unfold, you're like, oh, Predator, great. Like, and so I think, and I also think it's really important, and it was a really, really cool choice for the story because this shows all of these women in their power, especially Joe
Yeah.
being just like, this is who I am, and just fucking unapologetic. We see her right off the bat. She's a writer. She is selling a story in a world where, you know, it's supposed to be all men, right? Just like challenging that on such a fundamental level. And so when we go back and we see all of these women as children and see kind of like how they got to where they are, we're already, I mean, in the other one, we were invested already because like they were all so great together. But this one, we're invested because we're like, cool. How did you get there? What shaped you? Like,
Yes.
and it was done so well.
Even the last line of that scene, that opening sequence, he tells her to rewrite the ending. He says, make sure she's married or dead by the end. That line.
And then that comes back at the very end too. Incredible.
Not only that, but like on top of, because already this movie is still playing with like this sort of meta trope of like, she's writing the story of Little Women. It's the story of Little Women. Like we're kind of inside baseball a little bit. Cute, love it. This immediately is already setting the tone for the conversation about feminism and about feminists in this world and the conversation about tropes in story. So we're looking at, if we're looking at Joe, our main character, we're introduced, she's the one. He's literally telling the main character of the story that she's writing, which is her, make sure she's either married or dead by the end. And the way that she is so, like she tells us from the beginning largely, like, I'm not getting married, this comes first. We see that. So really what the story is Joe rebelling against a world that's trying to kill her and her saying, you can't fucking kill me, is the story. And they tell us, it's so well done. They tell us that. Step one, a minute in, boom. Make sure she's married or dead by the end. It's so, like, Jess, I was screaming. Saoirse Ronan, the way that she immediately is Joe. Oh, and then here's a fun thing about this, another fun fact. Saoirse didn't even audition. She just told Greta that she was going to be Joe.
Yeah, because they did Lady Bird together.
They did Lady Bird. And immediately after that, when Greta was like, had to fight, first and foremost gross, had to fight to get into the room to even be considered to write it. And then after writing it was like, wasn't even be considered to direct it. And then she's like, what are you talking? Yeah. And then they were like, okay, fine, I guess you can. She's like, yes, thank you. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Initially they didn't want her to adapt or direct. And then she's like, well, no, fuck that. I'm doing both. They're like, okay. But so when that happened, Saoirse was just like, I'm Joe. And she's like, you're Joe. She's like, good.
And yeah, I think I read that originally Greta was like, I don't know. She was worried about working with her after having just come off of Lady Bird, which, I mean, Timothée Chalamet is also in this too. So, but she was like, I don't know.
The Gerwig crew.
Yeah. But then she was like, oh no, that is the most Joe thing. Like, absolutely, you're Joe. There's no question. You are Joe.
Yes,
and she
literally.
did such a fucking wonderful performance.
It was
holy shit,
insanely good. Like, I was so. First of all, I love Saoirse. I think she's amazing. I think she's so talented.
Truly.
And in this movie, it's just what a fucking delight. The whole cast, like,
yes,
the whole cast. I could not tell you how beaming I was beaming when they go into the house initially. It was after the party, and she rolls her ankle, and they have to go back to the house. And this is the first time Timothée Chalamet shows up at the house, and we see Laura Dern, and she's like, hey, like, what's up? As soon as she's like being this lovely person, and she's like making all these jokes, she's juggling all these things, she's trying to get ice for the ankle. Then she makes a joke at Laura, like, hey, Laura, you need ice for your ankle, blah, blah, blah. Like, she's so charming, and she's so warm. It is the most eloquent, most perfect, illustrious, like, lovely, lovely, lovely introduction to this world. Where we see them all for the first time together as kids. Like, this is the first mom, kids, everyone. We're all here. Bang, bang, bang.
And the way they work together, right? Which is so flawless. Like, everybody knows exactly where to be and like at exactly what moment and where they're needed without even talking to each other. Just like, and yeah, she's like entertaining while she's also taking care of her daughter's sprained ankle. Like, very, very fun.
It's so good. So good. Yeah, so apart from like glowing reviews of this, should we talk about Laurie off the bat in this one?
I think so. I think just in general, I think that the men's introductions felt better and more organic, less predatory right off the bat, which is
especially with Frederick, especially with
him. Yeah. I really liked the character choices that they made for him, and it's interesting that they felt less predatory even with the context that we're given in the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
So I just think it was just overall better writing, which Greta, go off.
Amazing. Like, literally the sort of longing, like a stoop moment where it's like, oh, you're cute. Oh, so are you. Like, and they're kind of the same age, which is like iconic. So we're getting this moment. And then even the moment when she's like by the fireplace and her dress catches on fire and he's like, no, you're on fire. She's like, oh, what the fuck? And he's like, it's okay. And he shows his coattail and he's like, I do the same thing. I get lost in thought. And you're like, yes, this is exactly right. Like, of course.
Well, and also he's like a much kinder version, a much kinder, like more thoughtful version where like right off the bat, like before even reading anything, he just sees her writing and he gives her books and says like, hey, these will help you study character. Like, this is cool. Like, here, this is helpful. And then he like he invites her. He says, or like he asks, he said, hey, I would love to read your work if you trust me. Like the way that he words that, I forget the exact, but it was so perfect. It wasn't like saying, hey, give me your shit. It was just like, hey, if you feel comfortable and you are willing to trust me, I would absolutely love to read your work. And it was so honest and earnest. And even in the feedback that he gives her, I mean, like, he's a little bit harsh. He's like, I don't really like this, but he's not a super asshole like he was before.
Yes, she has a right to be kind of like, well, fuck you, I guess.
Absolutely.
But even then, he's not being like this belittling asshole. He's just like, well, no, I'm like, sure, it is hard to hear, and maybe I'm coming across like an asshole, but I don't intend to. However, it's a totally different framing of the same scene that I thought was so much better, especially for these peers who like are fond of each other. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very clear their tension is palpable, and we're seeing it. It felt like such a real scene of these two characters.
Yeah, and I liked that. I didn't feel like he was being malicious at all, which is really cool. I mean, Joe just has a hard time with, her reaction is very Joe and fit the character very well. But yeah, he is kind. He's not predatory. We see like those little interactions, like them passing each other at the door and stuff, like where they're drumming up interest. And I also really love that one of the things I fucking love so much about the start of this movie is we see Joe interacting with the world, going to the fucking bar and dancing with a bunch of dudes and doing all this stuff.
Amazing.
And she's doing this by herself individually, whereas in the last one, she had to be like, the door had to be opened for her basically, and that was opened by Frederick. So in this one, he has nothing to do with getting her these publishing jobs or allowing her into this conversation or anything, like as that kind of performative allyship that Frederick did in the last one, where like that was also very predatory, right? Because he was trying to get in her pants. But this one, he truly is just a peer, and she is a single woman living in New York and thriving. And because like it also felt a little bit weird for Joe's character in the last one to be in these spaces and to not fucking speak up when they're talking about feminism and she's just like, hey, you know, like that
literally,
felt very off.
That's not Joe. Joe wouldn't just sit back. Like, she is this adventurous, she is this sort of like
outspoken.
She's outspoken, she's charismatic, she's big, she's lively, she's let's go do that. I'm gonna go do that. Who said we can't? Nobody. Let's go. Like, she is that person.
So to see her, like, because in the other one, I think they were trying to be like, oh, well, she was, now she's a big fish in an ocean, not a big fish in a little pond, right? Like, I think that's what they were going for. But I liked this version better, where she is a big fish anywhere she goes, because she is just there and you have to deal with her because she's not leaving, she's not going anywhere. And so having Frederick just be a peer and be kind about what he's saying and being inviting and actually truly wanting to help her rather than just be predatory and belittle her and make her feel like shit was a much better take on that character.
And it lended more credence to the ending. When he shows back up and she's like, oh, I haven't seen you. And then everyone's like, oh, who is this guy? And she's like, we were friends. It's so much more believable. Like, yeah, they were peers. And on top of that, I love this, like, kind of like, he's hot. Like, hey.
I mean, that accent, right? Yeah. Just like go off. Fucking way better than Laurie.
And this was the thing that I loved about Laurie. What I was saying in the last one, where there was a line reading that I felt like was so much more specific to Laurie being a piece of shit, a dummy asshole. It was this scene. The whole time he's like, "Who's Frederick?" And nobody's listening.
He's like, "Excuse me, who's this person?
Wait, who's this person?" Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I laughed so hard.
It's so clear. Oh. Everyone's like, "Who is this fucking hottie?" And she's like, "It's nobody. Whatever." They're like, "He loves you," and she's like, "It's fine." And then he's like, "Wait, no, who is this guy?" And they're like, "Shut up, Laurie. Let's talk about this guy." And he's like, wait, who's this guy? They're like, shut up, Laurie.
And for the first time, he's having to cope with the fact that he's not the only man in this room.
And he's not the only one. He's not the desirable one anymore. He's not the one who everyone has to come to. There's another hot, another cool, arguably much better person than Laurie here in this room, and he cannot cope. His ego is so huge, and we're seeing it so clearly. It is everything that Laurie has been, was, and will be in this moment personified. His jealousy, his fear, his everything. And I mean, even in that fight where he's like, I'm going to be the one to watch, right? You're going to find somebody else, and then I'm going to be the one watching you fall in love with somebody
else.
Yeah, you are. Yes,
and you know what?
Fucking are.
You're going to be that person after you fucking marry my sister. Get fucked. Fucked. And at the end, he's the one that's holding the baby while Amy is off doing her thing with her sisters. I was like, yes fucking, she is going to keep him in her place. Because Amy in this movie is incredible. Does she make a bad choice with going with Laurie? Yes. But I think part of the reason that she makes that choice is because she knows that she can control him and put him in his fucking place. Because not once does Amy let anybody, especially Laurie, get away with fucking anything.
Truly. It's just so, it's so much more, it's just so well crafted. Like, I could not get over how much I like that scene. And even further, like, the whole meta commentary of, like, did that ending even happen, right? Like, iconic, where it's like, it cuts back to the first scene where it's, well, what would you need? Well, she needs to fall in love. She needs to go chase after him. And it's like, well, what if she chased, like, that's a good idea. What if she chased him to the train station and didn't let him go? Okay. Where they're, like, literally verbalizing what's happening and we're seeing it. It's like, is that real? Did that happen? Did he come back? Like, what is the story? Is it true? Is it not? Amazing. Like, I cannot get over, like, it's, to me, okay. I love the movie Big Fish. I think Big Fish is incredible. I think it's really, really good. I've watched it recently. A lot of problematic bullshit. I think it's messy, but the ending will never not make me cry. And this is like a very similar ending where it's like, you make it up. Mm-hmm. Like, tell me what happens. How does this story end? What if it's this? What if it's that? And it's like, does that even matter? Does it matter how this ends, really? Because that wasn't the story. The ending isn't the story. Our family and our love and our friendship is the story. Mm-hmm. And we've already told that story. And we have that with us forever, which is so perfect because at the end, you see her watching the book get bound. You see her see the gilded fucking gold take off. She takes the book home. And there in the backyard, she's walking through cake, kids, family, community. They go to the table. We see them all together. Perfection, because the ending doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter how this ends. What matters is them. And now they have this, not only in the physical book, but together as one forever. And it's just so beautiful. And I couldn't get over how good the ending was.
And also, it's not so the end, right? I mean, this is not the end of this story for these characters too, you know? So I really like when stories do that, when they leave it a little bit ambiguous and they allow for the fan fiction and the imagination and all of that to kind of take over, because life just continues, y'all.
Life just continues. And this is like a perfect example of some, it's so impressive. Like, what an impactful film.
Yeah, and I think the reason that a big reason why this is just such a good film and such a good take on this writing is just because in a large way the men were written better, you know, and
they were written more realistically too.
Yeah, so it gives it more depth, you know, it gives it more weight.
Oh my God,
when this stuff happens, you know.
Speaking of more weight, the death scene I do want to get into.
Fuck.
For how impactful it was. So before I do that, the scene where, what is his name? Mr. Lawrence.
Yes.
When he's waiting outside the house.
Oh my God.
And Joe walks up and she's like, "What are you doing out here?" And he's like, "I cannot go in there because if I go in there and she's not there, then it'll be real. Yeah. And I can't walk into this house expecting to see her because I expect to see her all the time there, but she isn't. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to reconcile that." And she's like, "What if we went in together?" And he's like, "Okay." Oh my God, Jez. It's just like,
I cried so hard.
It's so good because it's so real. Like that yearning of like, yeah, they died. Mm-hmm. Okay, what now? Like, I'm going to go back to this place where I know that they exist and they no longer exist. What does that mean? How am I supposed to fathom that? Oh, it's so impactful.
And that's part of the reason why these movies just made me fucking cry so much after losing the person that I love the most in the entire world. And seeing this and feeling that way. And I love, I mean, in the other one, it was, you know, Beth dies. It's very sad. But in this one, the way that they deal with that grief. And I feel like Beth got a better story in this because rather than her just being, I mean, sure, she was sick and not in a lot of this movie. She was still mobile. She still got to play. She had this beautiful connection with Mr. Laurie, right? And it wasn't gross at all. There was nothing predatory about it. But you see, like, he invites her. He knows that she's going to come over and play music, but he's like, if anybody plays piano, and she's like, I mean, I wouldn't want to impose. And he's like, no, please. And when she sits down to play and she's playing the scene where
stairs?
He walks down the stairs and he just sits there and he
starts crying
like, oh my God. Like, and then he like buys her the piano and like, you see just like how much like that connection means to him. And they're bonding through art and through like, just that was so good. And I feel like that gave so much more weight to her because like she had, you know, I mean, sure, she meant something to her sisters and stuff, but like this, I feel like that just added so much more depth to her.
Well, even like, it's like that on top, like just even like a nonverbal visualization of her impact, of like how much she means to the people in her life. Even this arguable stranger, he's weeping on the stairs because of the way she plays. Like, amazing. But then even subsequently, when she's at the beach with Joe, right, they're having this conversation. And again, even though she is disabled, she's still out. She's still enjoying her life. She's still with people. She still exists. You know, her life isn't over yet.
And in the other one, she was just bedridden and her life was
bedridden.
over.
Her life is over. Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, they're on the beach and, you know, she's kind of like helping Joe and she's like, I'm proud of you. Like, I love you. Like, you're such a good writer. Like, I want to hear what you wrote. I don't want you to read me like stuff that other people wrote. Well, and then seeing Joe climb into bed and just hold her sister. Oh my God, I'm going to cry right now talking about it. But it's that closeness and that love and that care and one of the best and most beautiful things that I have seen in a long time.
The way that they show it to it, like, I just cannot get over how well this story was like treated. And even like, and I know this is like the hardest thing to talk about, but the death scene, I alluded to it before, but like the way it's shot initially, right? Joe is by her side. It's coming. We know it's coming. She knows it's coming. It's gonna happen. She falls asleep and wakes up. Her sister's gone. The bed is made. Panic. She's up. She runs. We're getting these close-ups of her hands on the rail, her feet on the steps. It is sheer panic. This isn't it. This can't be it. There's no way. She runs into the kitchen. Her sister's there. She hugs her. She weeps. Fantastic. She's not like whatever. But then subsequently we get the exact same scene, except it's like everything's different. She falls asleep, wakes up. The bed is made. Her sister's not there, but she doesn't panic. There's just an understanding, a nonverbal understanding, like, okay, she knows. We watch her walk down the stairs and calmly into the kitchen, and we see Laura Dern there by herself. She turns, they weep. It happened. No words. Whoa. The way, Jess.
I know, I know.
The way this was done, I can't even, like, it's just so real, right? Like, these moments where it is just like, I know now. Right? She woke up and intuited, okay, I know this. I know what day today is. Let's go. I just have to go. And that is just, there it is. It happened. And like, it's just so well done. Like, that's how you tell a story. Like, how intense and how emotional and how difficult is that? And the way that the way that Greta Gerwig shows this, I can't get over it. I'm so impressed by it because it is so real. It's just so well done. It's so real. Fuck. Like, especially for it being kind of Joe's story, we're getting her sister's death through her eyes from just everything that it's setting up. We understand with her exactly what's happening in such a specific way, and it is perfect. It's perfect.
Especially after just all of those tender moments before that we didn't get, you know, we didn't really get in the other one, right? She shows up, they like talk for a minute and then it's done. But in this one, like, I mean, to spend like a full 10 minutes on their relationship and what they mean to each other and, you know, like having Beth just know that she's going to die, know that it's coming and being willing to face it like head on, unafraid.
It's
and
so...
just but so thankful to be there with her sister and just cherish every fucking moment. Like, especially after those tender moments, to then, like, that was absolutely the right choice, and I stand by that so hard.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Just the development of Beth, like, it made those moments more real. Because, like, in the other one, yes, it's sad she passes, but we don't know her really.
But
like,
it felt like they just kind of left her. She was forgotten about, and then they were like, "Oh shit, my sister died. Oh my gosh!" And in this one, it actually really means something
because we know her. We know who she is to these people. We know how she impacts strangers. Again, we know, like, her being like, "Fuck you. You should write again. What's wrong with you?" She's like, "No, whatever." She's like, "You're the best writer I know. You're an amazing writer and you should write. And you know what? Fuck you. If you're not going to write for you, write for me. Do it for me then. I know how much I mean to you. Hey. You should. I got you." And it's just, she's joyous. She's silly. She's fun. She's talented. She has so many things in this movie that she isn't in the other one, or at least that not that we get to see. Jess, this movie is like triumphant. It's really good. It's like
the other one's
really
like a
good.
10. The other one's like a 9.5. This one is a 12. Like
Yeah.
on a scale of 10.
Yeah. This one is like, it's so well done. And like,
let's get into Laurie because he's fucking gross. He's so privileged.
And
he keeps making everything about him. Everything is about him. He's a gaslighting, manipulative asshole and also a fucking fake feminist. I can't wait to get into this.
Well, the thing is I loved this iteration of this character so much
100%.
because it is not trying to masquerade as anything that it isn't. Like when we see him at that party and he causes a scene and throws his drink and says, "What about?" Like he's a brat. He's a little manipulative, privileged brat. We see him at every turn being this way. Like, there is never a moment of doubt that he is kind of this little, like, sleazy asshole.
And he's just performative, right? Like, anytime that he says anything that is, like, maybe like, oh, well, I'm an ally, right? He's, like, saying, oh, you don't need to say things like that. Or, like, I mean, but who decides who gets in the club of geniuses, right? I mean, it's men, am I right? You know, it's like, and that's his way of hitting on women, is trying to relate and trying to be like, oh, yeah, men control everything. But then also, he's trying to control them through his love and through his like his wealth and things like that. Like it's never about them and it's never about seeing them. It's just about that manipulation.
Yeah, it is so upfront and so apparent. And it's again, it is just such a good characterization of who this person is supposed to be for these characters. Like he has nothing to do with this story. He is just there to be this sort of antagonistic, archetypal, masculine figure, and he plays it so well in this movie.
He really did.
It's just
I mean,
so good.
The performance was great. The writing was great. Like I mean, I love that they kind of furthered how shitty he is, where like at first he like goes with Meg on that he can't let her have fun when she again gets all dressed up and is really he's like, I don't like the fuss and feathers, and like and she's drinking and he's like, you're gonna get a headache, and like everything that she's doing that brings her joy, he's like poo-pooing it, and he's like, you're not actually gonna marry anybody here, are you? Like, and then when she's crying, and this is Meg, when she's crying in the corner, he's like, hey, I mean, I'm sorry, it's fine, like, you want to dance? And she's just like, okay, well, just don't tell Joe, because like, just let me have my fun tonight and I'll be good for the rest of my life. And I love that they kept that line, because I think that's a really powerful line, and I think that this scene really speaks to who his character is. But God, like, I feel like this scene just stuck it a little bit better, where it's just like, God, yeah, no, he's an asshole. Like, she's having a drink of champagne and he's like, you're gonna get a headache. Like, fuck you. Like,
he's this controlling asshole.
God.
Like, she's beaming. She walks up to him beaming. She's glowing. She's having a lovely time. She gets to perform well. She gets to perform riches and luscious, illustrious gorgeousness. And she walks up glowing and beaming, and he says, I hate the way you look. Or like he says something so... He
says, I don't like the fuss and... or something like that. Later on, he says the fuss and feathers. But yeah,
he says just like,
gross.
I don't like it. I think you look terrible. I think you look bad. And she's like, what? And like, what about this makes me... What about this is bad?
Well, he wants her homely.
I don't like the fuss and feathers.
He wants her to be that poor girl that he can... parade his wealth on.
He just wants to control her. That's all it is like, she's like having joy, and he's like, I need to control that joy. In the same way that he wants to control Joe's joy and all of their joy. He is jealous, and he wants that. He wants to control them. Yes.
Like, I have like a whole thing on things that he says to Amy, which are really fucked up. So that's why I think the reason that Amy like gets with him is because, one, she's always loved him, right? Which, I mean... Okay, but two, because she knows that she can control him and she has no fucking problem like clapping back to him. Yeah. So we know who's in control in that relationship. But he says, one day you're going to be miserable too. Then he like has that whole fit at the party, right? And then he's like, oh, but don't worry, Fred, I love you. Oh, you're not engaged yet? Well, make your last portrait of me if this is the last time. Like, make, like, again, in every instance, he's centering himself in any fucking conversation, because he can't stand to have a conversation with a March girl and not have it be about him. And then the last thing that he says to her before like she decides to break off that marriage or that possible proposal is, riches sound weird on someone out of a March, or on someone out of a March girl or whatever. Like he's basically saying, you can't be rich. You're poor. This is how I see you, and this is where you belong unless you're with me, which is fucking wild and so controlling and so gross.
He's a stinky little baby. He's a stinky little baby.
And he looks like a stinky little baby.
He does. He's so, it's, ugh. I love his character in this. Or just like, I love that he is not, there are no punches pulled in describing how sort of obnoxious this man is.
And what a fucking mess he is too in Paris. Like, fucking mess. Yeah.
Well, just like, obviously he's going to be a part of the family. He ends up marrying Amy. Like, we know this, but like, we're not playing around in terms of making him look like an absolute narcissist. Like, oh, it's iconic.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Let's talk about Amy.
Let's talk about Amy. Florence Pugh. First and foremost, Florence Pugh had 2 days off between shooting Midsommar and this.
Oh shit, really?
Yes. So she wrapped filming for Midsommar, went home for 2 days, and was on set the third day to shoot Little Women.
Damn. Okay.
So it's literally the same exact time. She didn't have a break. But she said in interviews that like this was her therapy for that film. That's what she treated it like. Because that film is like,
I haven't seen it yet because it's real heavy.
For her character, it's really heavy. It's very gaslighty. It's very rough. It's very scary and sad. So to come off of that and then to go into this, iconic. She's so good. I fucking love really good. Florence Pugh. So Amy, this version of her, I'm obsessed with. She is Amy. This is Amy, like without a doubt, in all of her glory. I mean, granted, I completely agree when you brought it up in the last version. Her burning the novel and like sort of when she is young Amy, this sort of childishness that she's performing does feel a little out of place because it's just Florence Pugh, and Florence Pugh is not 8 years old.
She doesn't look, I mean, she looks like she's 25. They all look like they're 25 this whole time. And so I'm like, this feels, why are you doing that? You're better than this. Like,
it feels, I mean, granted, there is a level of me that was like, okay, it feels like maybe 13, 14, 15 angst, like my sister's left me out.
But she does not look 13, 14, 15.
I know. And it's the hardest part. It was a disconnect, but I mean, the performance was great. Just the look was not there, unfortunately, and that's just what it is.
But I did love that they, in her character, they really hit on that whole, like, she's carrying the weight and the expectations of women and of her whole family, which, you know, I feel like that was kind of there in the last one, but this one, that's her whole fucking character. She is told time and time again that she has to marry rich, that she has to take care of the family because the rest of her family fucked up and married poor and stuff, like, and she has her aunt that kind of like latches onto her. Her fucking aunt, Meryl Streep, was so good. And so bad. We see that way and what that means for her, because like there's so many lines where she's just talking about how she will not settle for second best in anything. If she's not the best, then it doesn't matter. Then fuck that, right? She wants to be the best painter, not just a painter, right? She doesn't care about love. She wants respect and she wants money and she wants to be able to take care of herself, especially after, like, I mean, arguably they're not poor in this iteration of the story, but like those were probably the poorest moments of her life when she was growing up, and she wanted all of these things and saw Laurie having all of these things, and so she decided that that is the life that she wants for her. And then again with her aunt kind of like poisoning her with all of that kind of nonsense, you know. And also like I really liked the line where she was talking about how she's always been in Joe's shadow when Laurie's like, marry me, you know. Oh god, gross. But she's
that scene
like,
was so good though. It was oh my god,
so good. She's like, I have always been second to Joe. I won't settle for anything. I will not settle for being second in your life. That is not how this works. I've spent my whole fucking life loving you. Fuck you. And she like walks away from him.
She storms away. You're like,
she
yeah,
has
good for you.
So much power in this role, and I love that energy that that she brought to this character. And I feel like there's a better because this story is Joe's story, but it's also in the last film, it was Joe and Meg's story. It felt like it was really their story. This one took so much more care to have Amy be that person, you know.
Yeah.
And because like too, I mean, she does kind of get the sloppy seconds and everything, right? She gets like, she gets with Lori, she gets with this. And then you see like just how much of Joe and watching Joe really did shape Amy,
Yeah.
And like her face when she looks up at her sister and like, when she comes back to the house and she's like, oh my God, so I'm so sorry. I wanted to write you like, oh, we're married. It's a thing. And she's just like, it's okay. I'm happy for you and I love you. And the tears like that she get, like she just has this moment where she's like, my sister's going to hate me forever. Oh my God. And she just feels such a sense of relief at like finally being able to have something that is hers, that is not like, that nobody else like told her that she can't have or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
this is something for her that she wanted and she got it. She's not going to be the best painter in the world. She's not going to marry for money or anything. She married Lori because that's what she wanted.
Yeah. It's so evident. And I think too, just from the performances of these actors, like part of what I was reading was the way Greta Gerwig directed this. Emma Watson said specifically like it was refreshing because I guess Greta would ask the actors like, they were more engaged with the takes, like not like we got it, I know what I'm doing. She'd be like, do you have anything else? Like, do you have another one? Like, was that the one? Did you feel like that was right? Like,
wow.
Like getting the actors' input to be like, for your character, is that the one? Like, was that the take? Do you feel like that is you?
That's fucking cool.
I mean, it fucking read. These characters really were there, and like, I feel like that has everything to do with how the way that directing style worked so eloquently. Like, I mean, obviously the talent is amazing, but being able to say like, for your character, do you think that was the right one? Like, obviously she's going to take what she needs to, but to be like, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Collab. Amazing. Iconic. And she did it pregnant. She did it pregnant too.
What? No way.
Greta Gerwig was pregnant while directing this.
Oh my God.
Which is, I mean, amazing, insane. What?
Go off.
Crazy. It's an incredible film. Like, it's so good. I could not believe how, like, I mean, I guess I could. I think Greta Gerwig is amazing, but just like, what a triumph. Like, what a good film.
Mm-hmm.
What a good film. Oh my God.
Should we do the outro?
Yeah, let's do the outro. Let's rock and roll.
And we're back. Cool.
Hello.
We made it.
Whoa.
All the way back from Concord in the 1800s. We're here.
We did it.
Eric.
Yes.
The 1994 version of Little Women.
Yeah.
Who was it for?
I mean, the story itself is for not men. I think is like the best way to say that. It's for women. It's for not men. Everything else is about men. Everything else centers men. Everything else has to do with them in some intrinsic or some sort of narrative based structure. And this movie doesn't. Fuck Lori. Who is Lori? Nobody. This movie's about them. Mm-hmm. So this movie is about women, for women, by women. Yes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. This movie is for women, not just little women, big women, young women, old women.
All women.
Yeah, all women. Literally all women. Everybody that's not a man, really.
Literally for not men. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, anybody that like doesn't subscribe to toxic masculinity for you. Sure. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say this is just for women, because how many times do we as women watch coming of age stories for dudes and we're like, oh yeah, cool. Like, that's it. No, fuck you. Watch this movie. Yeah. It is very good. I can't speak for the book. I'm sure the book is also great too, but like, watch it. It's great. Yeah. Did you like it?
I did like it. I thought it was really good. I mean, granted, we know my opinions. I like the other one more, but this one was great. This one's good. I mean, Kristen Dunst, an absolute star. Winona Ryder, incredible.
6 years old or whatever.
Truly. Susan Sarandon, she stole the show. She stole the fucking show. Mm-hmm. Susan Sarandon, iconic. Like, it's just, the cast was stacked, and it was well done. Just well done. It was good. It's a good movie. Did you like it?
100%. I love this movie. I do think that Marmee is better written in this movie, but I think that's because she's actually in it a little bit more, and it does center her a little bit more. So I mean, what a fucking good TV, or what a good movie mom. Like, goddamn, Susan Sarandon is always wonderful, but then also it's always such a treat to see her in roles like this. Like, God, she's so fucking good. But yeah, the whole cast, I mean, Winona Ryder was perfect. Kirsten Dunst was perfect. Christian Bale was perfect. Like, I feel like it was just perfect. You can just throw this on at any point, anytime, whatever. And it is also, like, so fucking funny. Don't let the name throw you off, like, where it's like, oh, Little Women, it's for women, so I shouldn't want, like, you know, whatever, whatever. No, like, this is literally...
It's good.
Don't let that stop you from enjoying an almost perfect film. Yeah, a good movie. What about the 2019 version? Was it new, interesting, or the same? Progressive, regressive? How we feeling?
I mean, it's new and interesting for all positive reasons. I think the narrative aspect, the way that we jump time, iconic, just from a storytelling perspective, amazing. Also interesting, the way that we get to spend more time with these very nuanced and very, like, realized characters in a way that we didn't in the other one. We get to see conflict. The intention of, like, Laurie's character being an asshole is so much more prevalent and so much more palpable and realized. It's like, I mean, the conversation around, like, feminism and in the book, like, we open it with, like, she either has to get married or she has to die. Amazing. Progressive. We're having those conversations. Iconic. I think the story has evolved with today's ideals in the very same way. I mean, we're looking at the base text for what it is, what it said, but we are reframing it in a way that is clear and specific to the misogyny of the time through the lens of this new narrative structure. I'm so impressed.
Absolutely. I think it's all three. I think it's new, interesting, and the same. The same in terms of it is the same base story, but interesting because of, like you were talking about, the time jumps and the way that the narrative isn't linear. I think that really serves it really well. And it took that framework and just mixed it around a little bit and really elevated and heightened every character, except Marmee. I'm gonna hold on to that one. But, like, heightened, like, just everything about this story, and I think it's more intentional. I think it's so much more progressive because it actually knew what it wanted to say a little bit better in terms of how we were dealing with the men in this story. So, you know, that the introduction of them being there, and then I don't know, it felt better and less predatory too, which was great. I mean, even though Laurie still is predatory, I liked that Frederick wasn't. I mean, it was just so good, and in a way that I don't think takes away from the other film, but in a way that you're like, cool, this is a good foundation for this, and then moving on. I mean, if you want to see the closeness of women being close and loving each other and just being a great family, the first one, I think, does that a little bit better because we do get so many moments of everybody being together, everybody hanging out and having a great time, you know. I think that closeness was more there. Also because I think Marmee was in it a little bit more, but I think just on every other front, this one really does kind of take the cake for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Who do you think this movie was for?
I stand by non-men. Like, it just... Similarly, and even more so, arguably, than the first, like, it's so specifically that. I mean, at the end of the day, it is for everybody. I do think it is a great story, but I do think that it is a story that is necessary, and it is a story for non-men. Everything else is for men. Story by women for women, or by non-men for non-men. Like, iconic and so thought-provoking, so intentional. It's so good. Who did you think it was for?
100%. Like, I wanted to, you know, I try to come up with, like, something funny. I'm not funny though, so it never happens. But no, truly, like, this is for not men, not shitty men. It's for women to make you feel seen and heard and, like, you know, empowered, and kind of cut through the bullshit of, like, Laurie actually, like, if somebody's, like, doing that Laurie behavior with you, that's a big old red flag, girl. Just, like, back the fuck away. So that's who it's for, Eric.
Yeah, without a doubt.
God. Yeah. Did you like it?
I loved it. I honestly, it's, like, exceptionally good. I struggled to find much that I disliked. Like, the pacing was incredible. The characters are incredible. Like, it's really, really good. It's a great film. Like, everything that everybody said about it previously were like, yeah, Little Women's amazing. It's amazing. It's like a really fucking good movie. This one in particular, I can't get over how impactful it was on me and how much I enjoyed it. Like, just what a good story.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I think they were, like we said, so intentional. Even with I mean, it's kind of like a footnote, but it's like in the first one especially, but it's like, oh, this takes place during the American Civil War, right? So we're talking about slavery and all of that. But there is that scene where they decide to address it, which the first one kind of skips over entirely, right? Where Laura Dern is like volunteering, like it looks like she's like helping people find people that came back from the war or whatever. She's in that space, right? And she's working next to a black woman. And I think it's like the soldiers are coming home. But anyway, she's like, well, I was just so ashamed of my country. And the black woman looks at her and says, you should still be ashamed. You should still be ashamed. Like, just because like now supposedly we're over this doesn't mean that you should not be ashamed of what you what has perpetuated, right? And they do also call there's a moment where Amy is at school and they kind of call out that the marches also benefited from slave labor. So, and then Amy is just like in fucking Amy fashion. She was just like, well, I mean, we all suck, we all deserve to be punished or something like that, right? But I like that it didn't excuse that and it kind of like forced you to confront that. But yeah, just so intentional with moments like that where, it takes like literally like 2 minutes just to like tie all of that in, but you're addressing that, you know what I mean? Rather than just skipping over it. So yeah, I mean, this movie is wonderful. It's so good. All of the performances are so good. Everybody is those characters. So good. Watch this. It is so delightful. It is less funny than the first one, but but it is just a very fucking good movie. It's really good. And it's gorgeous.
And it's so good. It's so gorgeous.
But yeah, that's it.
Wow, look at us.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for listening.
And please do not forget to rate and review us wherever you can and follow us on all of our beautiful social media. Please and thank you.
Yeah, we are starting to give some little teasers as to,
we're giving little notes to the upcoming episodes and so you can follow along too. So stay tuned on our social media. We'll post a week before, so if you want to watch along with us, you're more than welcome to. And that way, most of our rambling will make perfect sense.
You really saved me there. I just bombed. No, I think I'm just perfect. Ready for bed. Look at me.
I'm also very... I know. I feel like my eyes are like actively closing.
Oh my gosh, I think they are. Like you're like not even half mast. You're just like
I know. They're like
you're
really
either very high or very tired.
I know, right? I've also been staring at like my computer screen all day, so I'm just like,
oh my gosh, me too.
Oh my god, I'm just it's happening.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, is happening.
Follow us on social media. We're also on Letterboxd now. Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Jess.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric.
I'm Shelby.
I'm Jake.
And we are the band Lousy Advice from the Lousy Advice Podcast.
Come listen as we draft artist and genre-centric best of lists.
With the help of our closest friends.
These lists are canon.
And there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
From Misfits to Cher.
Green Day to Gaga.
Or Pup to Paramore.
Listen to the Lousy Advice Podcast now, or else.
Stream us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgia Network, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget that we are the band Lousy Advice, and this is our podcast, the Lousy Advice Podcast.
The Lousy Advice Podcast?
The Lousy Advice Podcast.